Hmm. Hmm. What's going on? Hmm. Let's see if I can switch over to YouTube. Let's see. Okay. Hello, friends. Uh, let's see if I can share. Wait a minute. I have to go over here, maybe. Go down here and copy, and then go back over here. Mm, Share. There we go. Hmm. So, uh, there's this guy. Is he still alive? Oh no, he's dead. Okay. Yeah, he looks like this, or did look like that in 2006, and uh, he um, he is one of the founding fathers of artificial intelligence, along with Alan Turing. Alan Turing has there's been a movie on him. Let's see, Alan Turing. If we click on that, that's what he looks like. There was a hmm, Turing. The how Alan Turing cracked the Enigma code. Uh, Books. See. See also Legacy of Alan Turing. Let's see. Personal life. Engagement. He got in trouble for his homosexuality. He got convicted of it. Uh, uh, he So in 1954, he may have committed suicide. With a cyanide poisoning. It was it was speculated that this was the means by which Turing had consumed a fatal dose. Hmm. And I don't see the movie that he was in. Uh, uh, Maybe it's at the top. Alan Turing. He is widely considered to be the father of theoretical computer science and artificial intelligence. He was he was a mathematician, computer scientist, logician, cryptanalyst, philosopher, and theoretical biologist. He was highly influential in the development of theoretical computer science, providing a formalization of the concepts of algorithm and computation with the Turing machine, which can be considered a model of a general purpose computer. Oh, mm, 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 mm. Mm. Here's the uh, 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 here's something he wrote. Personally, I believe that spirit is really eternally connected with matter, but certainly not by the same kind of body. As regards to the actual connection between spirit and body, I consider that the body can hold on to a spirit whilst the body is alive and awake. The two are firmly connected. When the body is asleep, I cannot guess what happens, but when the body dies, the mechanism of the body holding the spirit is gone, and the spirit finds a new body sooner or later, perhaps immediately. University work, computer little bit. Career cryptanalysis. Cryptanalysis. During the Second World War, Turing was a leading participant in the breaking of the German ciphers at Bletchley Park. The historian and wartime codebreaker Asa Briggs had said, "You needed exceptional talent. You needed genius at Bletchley, and Turing was that genius." From September 1938, Turing worked part-time with the Government Code and Cipher School, the British code-breaking organization. He concentrated on cryptanalysis of the Enigma cipher machine used by Nazi Germany, together with Dilly Knox, a senior uh, GC and CS codebreaker. Soon after the July 1939 meeting near Warsaw, at which the Polish Cipher Bureau gave the British and French details of the wiring of the Enigma machine rotors and their method of decrypting Enigma machine's messages, Turing and Knox developed a broader solution. The Polish method relied on an insecure indicator procedure that the Germans were likely to change, which they in fact did in May 1940. Turing's approach was more general, using crib-based decryption, for which he produced the functional specification of the bomb bay, an improvement on the Polish bomba. And on September 4th, 1939, the day after the UK declared war on Germany, Turing reported to Bletchley Park, the wartime station of GC and CS. Like all others who came to Bletchley, he was required to sign the official Secrets Act, in which he agreed not to disclose anything about his work at Bletchley, which with severe penalties for violating the act. Specifying the Bombay was the first of 5 major cryptanalytical advances that Turing made during the war. The others were deducing the indicator procedure used by the German Navy, developing a statistical procedure dubbed Bamburismus for making much more efficient use of the Bombays, developing a procedure dubbed Turingery for working out the cam settings of the wheels of the Lawrence SZ4042 tuner cipher machine, and towards the end of the war, the development of a portable, secure voice scrambler at Hanslope Park that was codenamed Delilah. By using statistical techniques to optimize the trial of different possibilities of the code-breaking process, Turing made an innovative contribution to the subject. He wrote 2 papers discussing mathematical approaches titled "The Applications of Probability to Cryptography" and paper on statistics of repetitions, which were of such value to GC and CS and its successor, GCHQ, that they were not released to the UK National Archives until April 2012, shortly before the centenary of his birth. The GCHQ mathematician, who identified himself only as Richard, said at the time that the fact that the contents had been restricted under the Official Secrets Act for some 70 years demonstrated their importance and their relevance to post-war cryptanalysis. That was held secret for 70 years. It was made unsecret in 2012. That's only 11 years ago. He said that the fact that contents had been restricted shows what a tremendous importance it has in the foundations of the subject. The papers detailed using mathematical analysis to try and determine which are the most likely settings so that they can be tried as quickly as possible. Richard said that GCHQ had now squeezed the juice out of the two papers and was happy for them to be released into the public domain. Mm, 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 Between 1945 and 1947, Turing lived in Hampton, London, while he worked on the design of the ACE automatic computing engine at the National Physical Laboratory, NPL. He presented a paper on the 19th of February 1946, which was the first detailed design of a stored program computer. Von Neumann's incomplete first draft of a report on the EDVAC had predated Turing's paper, but it was much less detailed, and according to John R. Womersley, superintendent of the NPL mathematics division, it contains a number of ideas which are Dr. Turing's own. Although ACE was a feasible design, the effect of the Official Secrets Act surrounding the wartime work at Bletchley Park made it impossible for Turing to explain the basis of his analysis of how a computer installation involving human operators would work. This led to delays in starting the project and he became disillusioned. In late 1947, he returned to Cambridge for a sabbatical year, which he produced a seminal work on intelligent machinery that was not published in his lifetime. While he was at Cambridge, the Pilot Ace was being built in his absence. It executed its first program on the 10th of May in 1950, and a number of later computers around the world owe much to it, including the English Electric Deus and the American Bendix G15. The full version of Turing's Ace was not built until after his death. According to the memoirs of German computer pioneer Heinz Billing from the Max Planck Institute for Physics, published by Genscher Dusseldorf, there was a meeting between Turing and Konrad Zuse. It took place in Göttingen, 1947. The interrogation had the form of a colloquium. Participants were Marshall Turing Porter from England and a few German researchers like Zuse, Walter, and Billing. For more details, see Herbert Bruder, Konrad Zuse on the slides. Uh, 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 uh. Okay. Hmm. But let's go. Uh, it's amazing that they don't mention the movie that they made about his life. Oh, it's not listed here. Oh, let's see. Whoa. Oh man. Oh, okay. So John McCarthy, uh, he died 12 years ago. So he was one of the founders of artificial intelligence, along with Turing. He he co-authored a document that coined the term artificial intelligence. So he was one of the first persons to begin using the word artificial intelligence. And he developed a programming language, uh, a kind of programming language. It's now like a family of languages, starting off with Lisp, LISP, in which significantly influenced the design of another language, ALGOL, which popularized time sharing and invented garbage collection. So let's see. Let's see. Contributions to computer science. Yes, he is one of the founding fathers of artificial intelligence, together with Alan Turing, Marvin Minsky, Alan Newell, and Herbert A. Simon. McCarthy Minsky, Nathaniel Rochester, and Claude E. Shannon coined the term artificial intelligence in a proposal that they wrote for the famous Dartmouth Conference in the summer of 1956. This conference started AI as a field. Minsky later joined McCarthy at MIT in 1959. In 1958, he proposed the advice taker, which inspired later work in question answering and logic programming. And he discovered that primitive recursive functions could be extended to compute with symbolic expressions, producing the Lisp programming language. That functional programming seminal paper also introduced the lambda notation, borrowing the syntax of lambda calculus, in which later dialects like Scheme based its semantics. Lisp soon became the programming language of choice for AI applications after its publication in 1960. In 1958, McCarthy served on an Association for Computing Machinery ad hoc committee on languages that became part of the committee that designed a language called ALGOL 60. In August 1959, he proposed the use of recursion and conditional expressions, which became part of ALGOL. He then became involved with developing international standards in programming and informatics as a member of the International Federation for Information Processing. And Working Group 2.1 on Algorithmic Languages and Calculate, which specified, maintains, and supports ALGOL 60 and ALGOL 68. And he invented the so-called garbage collection methods, a kind of automatic memory management to solve problems in Lisp. He helped to motivate the creation of Project Mac at MIT when he worked there. At Stanford University, he helped establish Stanford AI Laboratory for many years, a friendly rival to Project Mac. And he was instrumental in the creation of three of the very earliest time-sharing systems. Compatible time-sharing system, BBN time-sharing system, and Dartmouth time-sharing system. His colleague Lester Ernest told the Los Angeles Times the internet would not have happened nearly as soon as it did, except for the fact that John initiated the development of time sharing systems. We keep inventing new names for time sharing. It came to be called servers. Now we call it cloud computing. That is still just time sharing. John started it, John McCarthy. And he was the first to suggest the idea of utility computing in a speech given to celebrate MIT centennial, that computer time sharing technology might result in a future in which computing power and even specific applications could be sold through the utility business model, like water or electricity. This idea of a computer or information utility was very popular during the late 60s, but had faded by the mid 90s. However, mid yeah. However, since 2000, the idea has resurfaced in new forms. New forms of what the new forms would be things like application service provider, grid computing, and cloud computing. Hmm. In what? In 16? Uh, that's a that's like a typo error. Hmm. McCarthy and his team at Stanford wrote a computer program used to play a series of chess games with counterparts in the Soviet Union. And McCarthy's team lost two games and drew two games. From 78 to 86, McCarthy developed the circumscription method of non monotonic reasoning. In 82, he seemed to have originated the idea of the space fountain, a top of tower extending into space and kept vertical by the outward force of a stream of pellets propelled from Earth along a spot of conveyor belt, which returns the pellets to Earth. Payloads would ride the conveyor belt upward. Hmm. 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 Uh, hmm. McCarthy saw the importance of mathematics In mathematics education, his Usenet.sig for years was he who refuses to do arithmetic is doomed to talk nonsense. And he, on his license plate, he had do the arithmetic or be doomed to talk nonsense. He advised 30 PhD graduates. He had a short story called The Robot and the Baby. Farcically explored the question of whether robots should have or simulate having emotions and anticipated aspects of internet culture and social networking that have become increasingly prominent during its ensuing decades. Mm, let's see what it says in under the philosophy of artificial intelligence, ascribing mental qualities to machines. In it, he wrote, machines are as simple as thermostats can be said to have beliefs, and having beliefs seems to be a characteristic of most machines capable of problem solving performance. And in 1980, the philosopher John Searle responded with his famous Chinese room argument, disagreeing with McCarthy and taking the stance that machines cannot have beliefs simply because they are not conscious. Searle argues that machines lack understanding or intentionality, a term commonly used in the philosophy of mind. A vast amount of literature has been written in support of one side or the other. Mm, mm. So, what do you think? It sounds like McCarthy uh, decided that a machine can have beliefs as simple as a thermostat setting, like my air conditioner is set to go to turn on when the temperature is less than 75 degrees, let's say. So it turns on and it blows cold air, and then it shuts off after the temperature goes down to 75. So that machine has a belief that it should turn on when the temperature is hotter than 75. But John Searle disagreed with saying that the air conditioner has a belief. It cannot have a belief because they are not conscious. So and thus and Searle argues that the machine lacks understanding or intentionality. Okay, so let's find out what intentionality means. So intentionality is the power of minds to be about something. Mm, what? To represent or stand for things, properties, and states of affairs. Intentionality is primarily ascribed to mental states like perceptions, beliefs, or desires, which is why it has been regarded as the characteristic mark of the mental by many philosophers. A central issue for theories of intentionality has been the problem of intentional inexistence. To determine the ontological status of the entities which are the objects of intentional states. A central issue for theories of intentionality has been the problem of intentional inexistence. Uh, whoa. Intentional inexistence. To determine the ontological status of the entities which are the objects of intentional states. Uh, uh, to determine the ontological status of the entities which are the objects of intentional states. So, how do we determine whether the entity has intentionality? Hmm. What does ontological mean? I keep forgetting. I have to. Oh, I have an appointment with my ontologist. Ontological? Ontological. Ontological. Ontology. In metaphysics, ontology is the philosophical study of being. In metaphysics, ontology is the philosophical study of being. It investigates what types of entities exist, how they are grouped into categories, and how they are related to one another on the most fundamental level. So, what kind of entity am I? Uh, am I similar to an air conditioner? What kind of entity is the air conditioner? Which one exists more? Is there like a level of existence? The one who has more consciousness is more existent than one who has no consciousness or some consciousness. Or it appears to have some kind of consciousness because it seems to act on its own, like the air conditioner seems to be acting on its own with the belief system that it has, like a setting, a temperature setting, where the mechanism is already there, but then it can be set by the operator of the air conditioner. So the operator gives the air conditioner its belief that it should turn on when the temperature is hotter than 74 degrees, 75 degrees. In metaphysics, ontology is the philosophical study of being. Does the air condition is the air conditioning a being? Well, it's not considered a sentient being. Hmm. Ontologists often try to determine what the categories or highest kinds are and how they form a system of categories that encompasses the classifications of all entities. Commonly proposed categories include substances, properties, relations, state of affairs, and events. These categories are characterized by fundamental ontological concepts, including particularity and universality, abstractness and concreteness, or possibility and necessity. Of special interest in is the concept of ontological dependence, which determines whether the entities of a category exist in the most fundamental level. Disagreements within ontology are often about whether entities belonging to a certain category exist, and if so, how are they related to other entities? Hmm. An illustration of the Cartesian model. No, of Cartesian materialism, which argues that it is possible to find the content of conscious experience moment by moment in the mind. Materialism, in general, argues that matter is the fundamental substance, is an influential perspective on ontology. When used as a countable noun, the words ontology and ontologies refer not to the science of being, but to theories within the science of being. Mm. Ontological theories can be divided into various types according to their theoretical commitments. Monocategorical ontologies hold that there is only one basic category, but polycategorical ontologies rejected this view. Hierarchical ontologies assert that some entities exist in a more fundamental level and that other entities depend on them. Flat ontologies, on the other hand, deny such a privileged status to any entity. So you got monocategorical ontologies, you got polycategorical ontologies, hierarchical ontologies, and flat ontologies. So, which one do I believe in, or do I think is more correct? Or maybe they're all correct, or maybe they're just different ways of looking at things. So the compound word ontology, the study of being, combines onto, Greek, uh, has got some symbols there. Onto means being or that which is, and logia means logical discourse. Well, the etymology is Greek. The oldest extant records of the word itself is a Neo-Latin form, ontologia, which appeared in 1606 in the Ogdoas Scholastica by Jacob Lorhard. And in 1613, in the Lexicon Philosophicum by Rudolf Goclenius, the first occurrence in English of ontology as recorded by the Oxford English Dictionary came in 1664 to the Archaeologia Philosophica Nova by Gideon Harvey. The word was first used in its Latin form by philosophers and based on their Latin roots, and in return to the Greek ones. In 1664. Ontology is closely associated with Aristotle's questions of being qua being. The question of what all entities in the widest possible sense have in common. The Eleatic principle is one answer to this question. It states that being is inextricably linked to causation, that power is the mark of being. One problem with this answer is that it excludes abstract objects. Another explicit but little accepted answer can be found in Berkeley's slogan that to be is to be perceived. Intimately related but not identical to this question of being qua being is the problem of categories. Categories are usually seen in the highest kinds of or genera. A system of categories provides a classification of entities that is exclusive and exhaustive. Every entity belongs to exactly one category. Various such classifications have been proposed. They often include the categories for substances, properties, relations, state of affairs, or events. At the core of the differentiation between categories are various fundamental ontological concepts and distinctions. For example, the concept of particularity and universality, of abstractness and concreteness, of ontological dependence, of identity, and of modality. These concepts are sometimes treated as categories themselves, are used to explain the difference between categories or play other central roles for categorizing this different ontological theories. Within ontology, there is a lack of general consensus concerning how the different categories are to be defined. Different ontologists often disagree on whether a certain category has any members at all or whether a given category is fundamental. Whew. So, let's see. Let's uh, let's meditate on what I have shared. Whew. I shared a lot. I read a lot. Mm, uh, what can I what can I pull out from all this? I've just scratched the surface, and I looked into some great mathematicians that were influential in computer science and artificial intelligence. And one of them was Alan Turing, and you could say he helped Great Britain in the war effort because with his help and his team of helpers, they were able to break the code of the Enigma, and by doing that, that gave uh, Great Britain an advantage in that uh, be they could be reading German messages, and they could be finding out what they were up to. And the Germans were pretty sure that they couldn't have done that. The Enigma was unbreakable, huh? And they were able to find a way to read the messages. Even when the Germans changed the the starting like the key, uh, something like that. Hmm. But there was this movie that I saw that was about his life, and so hmm, what was the what was the movie? Let's see. I could Google it. I could go like this, like this. I could go like this. Say I could type in, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, I could go like google.com. Okay, I typed in google.com and type in movie about Alan Turing. Hmm. I get, I set my, oh, oh, I don't want to go into my Google account right now. Okay. Well, there's several movies about him or related to him. There's Codebreaker, The Imitation Game. That's, I think that's the movie. Hmm. It's a, I have this page in Spanish or translated into Spanish. So the imitation game, they they would they had they have titled the movie in Spanish as El Código Enigma, the Enigma Code. Hmm. So I could translate from Spanish to English in real time. Where it says here, durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial, during the Second World War, el genio de las matemáticas, Alan Turing. Oh, I spelled Turing wrong. I put Touring, but Google figured out what I meant. The genius of the mathematician Alan Turing, the mathematical genius, the genius mathematician Alan Turing, Turing, and his team of and his team, they tried to break the German uh, code generating machine called the Enigma. Mm, So there's clips from that movie and the actors who were in it. But it is based on the real life story of legendary cryptanalyst Alan Turing. The film portrays the nail biting race against time by Turing and his brilliant team of codebreakers at Britain's top secret government code and cipher school at Bletchley Park during the darkest days of World War II. Alan Turing is shown running in various scenes. It is never mentioned in the film, but he was a world class distance runner. In 1946, he ran a marathon in 2 hours and 46 minutes. There's some errors in the movie. Let's see. When Alan Turing is introduced to Hugh Alexander, it is said that Hugh Alexander is a chess champion, although he really won the British national chess champion. The blah blah blah. Uh, the but can I go back? Uh, how do I unshare? Okay, but uh, what is the name of the test to see if a machine has intelligence? Is it the Turing test? Let's see. Or is it something else? A, a Monte Carlo test. Let's see. What is the Monte Carlo test? Monte Carlo test. No, that's something else. What about the Turing test? Okay, here it is. Oh, they named the movie after it. The Turing test is originally called The Imitation Game by Alan Turing in 1950. It is a test of the machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior, equivalent to or indistinguishable from that of a human. Turing proposed that a human evaluator would judge natural language conversations between a human and a machine designed to generate human-like responses. The evaluator would be aware that one of the two partners in the conversation was a machine, and all participants would be separated from one another. The conversation would be limited to a text only channel, such as a computer keyboard and screen, so the result would not depend on the machine's ability to render words as speech. If an if the evaluator could not reliably tell the machine from the human, the machine would be said to have passed the test. The test results would not depend on the machine's ability to give correct answers to questions, only on how closely its answers resembled those a human would give. Since the Turing test is a test of indistinguishability in performance capacity, the verbal versions generalizes naturally to all of human performance capacity, verbal as well as nonverbal robotic. The verbal version generalizes naturally to all of human performance, verbal. Okay. Oh, the test was introduced by Turing in his 1950 paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence, while working at the University of Manchester. It opens with the question with the words, I propose to consider the question, can machines think? Because thinking is difficult to define, Turing chooses to replace the question by another, which is closely related to it, and it is expressed in relatively unambiguous words. Turing described the new form of the problem in terms of a three-person game called the imitation game, in which an interrogator asks questions of a man and a woman in another room in order to determine the correct sex of the two players. Turing's new question is, are there imaginable digital computers which would do well in the imitation game? This question Turing believed was one that could actually be answered. In the remainder of the paper, he argued against all the major objections to the proposition that machines can think. Since Turing introduced his test, it has been both highly influential and widely criticized, and has become an important concept in the philosophy of artificial intelligence. Some of the criticisms, such as John Searle's Chinese Room, are themselves controversial. So the question of whether it is possible for machines to think has a long history, which is firmly entrenched in the distinction between dualist and materialist view of the mind. Rene Descartes prefigures aspects of the Turing test in his 1637 Discourse on the Method when he writes, how many different automata or moving machines could be made by the industry of man? For we can easily understand a machine's being constituted so that it can utter words and even emit some responses to actions on it of a corporeal kind, which brings about a change in its organs. For instance, if touched by in a particular part, it may ask what we wish to say to it. In a particular part, it may ask what we wish to say to it. If in another part, it may exclaim that it is being hurt and so on, but it never happens that it arranges its speech in various ways in order to reply appropriately to everything that may be said in its presence, as even the lowest type of man can do. Here, Descartes notes that automata are capable of responding to human interactions, but argues that such automata cannot respond appropriately to things said in their presence in the way that any human can. Descartes therefore prefigures the Turing test by defining the insufficiency of appropriate linguistic response as that which separates the human from the automaton. Descartes fails to consider the possibility that future automata might be able to overcome such insufficiency, and so does not propose the Turing test as such, even if he prefigures the conceptual framework and criticism criterion. And then Denis Diderot formulates in his 1746 book Pensées philosophiques a Turing test criterion, though with important implicit limiting assumptions maintained of the participants being natural living beings rather than considering created artifacts. He wrote, if they find a parrot who could answer to everything, I would claim it to be an intelligent being without hesitation. This does not mean he argues with this, he agrees with this, but that it was already a common argument of materialists at that time. According to dualism, the mind is a non-physical, or at the very least, has non-physical properties, and therefore cannot be explained in purely physical terms. But according to materialism, the mind can be explained physically, which leaves open the possibility of minds that are produced artificially. So, that was considered, or that was being thought about as far back as Descartes, at least in Europe. Maybe it was being discussed in other parts of the world. In 1936, philosopher Alfred Ayer considered the standard philosophical questions of other minds. How do we know that other people have the same conscious experiences that we do? In his book, Language, Truth, and Logic, Ayer suggested a protocol to distinguish between a conscious man and an unconscious machine. A conscious man and an unconscious machine. The only ground I can have for asserting that an object which appears to be conscious is not really a conscious being, but only a dummy or a machine, is that it fails to satisfy one of the empirical tests by which the presence or absence of consciousness is determined. This suggestion is very similar to the Turing test, but it is not certain that Ayer's popular philosophical classic was familiar to Turing. In other words, a thing is not conscious if it fails the consciousness test. Oh, is there such a thing as a consciousness test? Tests where a human judges whether a computer or an alien is intelligent were established convention in science fiction by the 1940s, and it is likely that Turing would have been aware of these. Stanley G. Weinbaum's A Martian Odyssey provides an example of how nuanced such tests could be. Earlier examples of machines or automatons attempting to pass as human include the ancient Greek myth of Pygmalion, who creates a scripture of a woman that is a sculpture of a woman that is animated by Aphrodite. Carlo Collodi's novel, The Adventures of Pinocchio, about a puppet who wants to become a real boy, and E.T.A. Hoffman's 1816 story, The Sandman, where the protagonist falls in love with an automaton. In all these examples, people are fooled by artificial beings that, up to a point, pass as human. Mm. Alan Turing and the Imitation Game. Researchers in the United Kingdom had been exploring machine intelligence for up to 10 years prior to the founding of the field of artificial intelligence research in 1956. It was a common topic among members of the Ratio Club, an informal group of British cybernetics and electronics researchers that included Alan Turing. Turing, in particular, had been running the notion of machine intelligence since at least 1941. And one of the earliest known mentions of computer intelligence was made by him in 1947. In Turing's report, Intelligent Machinery, he investigated the question of whether or not it is possible for machinery to show intelligent behavior. And as part of that investigation, proposed what may be considered the forerunner to his later tests. He wrote, "It is not difficult to devise a paper machine which will play a not very bad game of chess. Now get three men, A, B, and C, as subjects for the experiment. A and C are to be rather poor chess players. B is the operator who works the paper machine. Two rooms are used with some arrangements for communicating moves, and a game is played between C and either A or the paper machine. C may find it quite difficult to tell which he is playing. Computing Machinery and Intelligence was the first published paper by Turing to focus exclusively on machine intelligence. Turing begins the paper with a claim: I propose to consider the questions, can machines think? As he highlights, the traditional approach to such a question is to start with definitions, defining both the terms machine and think. Turing chooses not to do so. Instead, he replaces the question with a new one, which is closely related to it and is expressed in relatively unambiguous words. In essence, he proposes to change the question from can machines think to can machines do what we as thinking entities can do? The advantage of the new question, Turing argues, is that it draws a fairly sharp line between the physical and intellectual capacities of a man. To demonstrate this approach, Turing proposes a test inspired by a party game known as the imitation game, in which a man and a woman go into separate rooms and guests try to tell them apart by writing a series of questions and reading the typewritten answers sent back. In this game, both the man and the woman aim to convince the guests that they are the other. What? Huma Shah argues that this two-human version of the game was presented by Turing only to introduce the reader to the machine-human question-answer test. Turing described his new version of the game as follows. We now ask the question, what will happen when a machine takes the part of A in this game? Will the interrogator decide wrongly as often when the game is played like this as he does with the game when the game is played between a man and a woman? This question, these questions replace our original can machine thinks. In 1966, Joseph Weizenbaum created a program which appeared to pass the Turing test. The program, known as ELIZA, worked by examining a user's typed elements for keywords. If a keyword was found, a rule that transforms the user's comment is applied and the resulting sentence returned. Oh, oh, the Chinese room. John Searle's 1980 paper Minds, Brains, and Programs proposed the Chinese room thought experiment and argued that the Turing test could not be used to determine if a machine could think. Searle noted that software such as ELIZA could pass the Turing test simply by manipulating symbols of which they had no understanding. Without understanding, they could not be described as thinking in the same sense people did. Therefore, Searle concluded the Turing test could not prove that machines could think. Much like the Turing test itself, Searle's argument has been both widely criticized and endorsed. Arguments such as Searle's and others working on the philosophy mind sparked of more intense debate about the nature of intelligence and the possibility of machines with a conscious mind and the value of Turing tests that continued throughout 1980s and 1990s. Okay. So, uh, what did I get out of it? So yes, there's the Turing test, and Turing called it the imitation game, or maybe there was already a game like it. Uh, a party game. It, it sounded like you have two rooms and you can't see who's in the rooms, but you can communicate with them by typing. And in one, and so is it like you're asking questions to them and you're trying to guess what sex they are, and maybe there's a man in one room and he's pretending to be a woman when answering the questions, and in the other room there's a woman and she's pretending to be a man when she answers the questions she gets. Is that right? And so Turing said, well, let's replace one of them with a machine, and that machine is going to decide to be one or the other. And so there's one person not receiving the question and chatting with someone in room A and someone in room B. And one of the rooms could be a machine that's a robot, a an artificial intelligence. So it it sounds like, can machines think? It sounds like Turing rephrased the question to be, can machines be designed to imitate our our abilities to receive messages and respond to them. So it, there would be an observer looking at the chat going on, and and uh, and it, and it's a chat between a real person and either another real person or a machine. And so the observer has to decide whether it's a chat between that real person and on the other side is either a machine or another real person. Has to decide whether it's a real person. If has to determine whether the conversation is between a real person and another real person, or that same real person and a machine, something like that. So so if you can design a machine that that can that can fool the observer, that you can't or at least that you can't tell the difference between how the machine is answering and how another human would, a real human, a real human, a person would be in the place of the machine. If you could swap them, like, okay, let's swap the chat with either, or swap back and forth, like swap at any time. Well, maybe you'd have to allow the computer to review all the previous questions and answers, and then to sort of, with that information, know how to respond, or what came before, so that it could continue to function in a way that would fool the person. Maybe because the computer has superior memory and is faster, it could do a better job of pretending to be human, or imitating human capability of thinking. So we have to think about thinking itself. What is thinking versus what is being conscious? And we have to think about other related terms of conscious, of the word conscious, being aware, being, what is it to be unconscious? What is it to be subconscious? Or no, that that's not used. The word the subconscious mind is used. Uh, we'll explore that more deeply at another time. But for now, I'm signing off to do other things.